Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. In this episode, I'm joined by my good mate, Sam Rasdall. Sam's a marketing expert, and in this episode, he's going to be sharing exactly why marketing and sales need to be working together, and if they're not, then your marketing simply won't work. He's also going to break down exactly how he would spend your marketing budget. Sam,
Jamie.
Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment.
Thank you very much.
For anyone that doesn't know you, would you do like a 30-second intro to you?
Yeah, Sam, Leeds fan, I'll say that because you're a lovely Millwall fan. So I guess right now I run Potem, which does a myriad of things, but essentially works at helping people with their brand and websites, helping with their marketing in a host of different ways, then a bit of fractional stuff. But my background, I was at S3 for a little while, liked recruitment, but didn't have a lot of the core traits needed. I was very impatient. So I went into sort of coaching people at S3 and built an academy there, which helped us win contract team of the year within S3, which was great. And then COVID hit and everyone went from home and I couldn't do a lot of that training. So I went over to Bold. I think it was the first sales hire over there. It was about 4 of us at the time. And within a few years built that up to £1 million in revenue, sustained that through the lovely post-COVID bloom or doom I should say that we had, and then got to MD and realised that just meant you put out a lot of fires and you're far removed from doing what you enjoy doing, so hence I moved on to Potem really.
Can I just go back a little bit and just tell me,
Far
do you
away.
mind if I just dig into your time at
course.
S3 as a recruiter? You said that I didn't have some of the core traits. Is that you didn't have the core traits to operate at S3 or just core traits to operate as a recruiter?
Potentially. I loved my time at S3. I thought it was fabulous. It gets a bad rep from a lot of angles.
Do you know what I think, and like I've never worked at S3, but I think some of the best recruitment businesses I know are a product of S3. So I think any bad rep is probably unfounded.
I think there's often people that couldn't hack it a lot of the time, I think, because it was you were building your own business and you were expected to do that in the right way, and you got great training, but it was also off you go, like go and do now, which I loved. And I learned so much about running a business just from how to build a book. It was a contract book, so you had to understand a lot of commercial aspects, which taught me so much. I didn't have the relentless kind of I can do these same 5 tasks every day and I know when I do these at the end of the month I'm gonna get my results. I didn't have that. I was too impatient. I wanted more stuff quick. I wanted to do more and do other stuff. So within a few months I was running a tech lead meetup because I was more interested in that, which was great, and it gave me loads of we'll talk about it a bit later, but it kind of, pennies dropped years later. That's actually a great way to do BD, and we'll talk about that. But the actual, I'm going to pitch out this candidate to 15 people minimum on the phone, and then for doing that every day, I just didn't have the brain for it. I was a bit too scatty, probably. So I was very driven, but not in that repetitive way. And I think for me, all the best recruiters that I see have a process, a method, whatever that is, that works for them. And they're relentless and consistent with it, and they know it works, so they do it relentlessly and consistently, and they know they're going to get the results. I think I've found my way in how I do stuff now, but I'll do something for 3 months, then I'll tweak it for a bit and try that for a week and do that for a month, and I think that's probably what I didn't quite have, but I loved. So again, one of the things I loved at S3, it was very competitive, very competitive. So from week 1, I remember every Friday it was objection handling, but the whole office, 30, 40 people in the kitchen, pulling lots or whatever, right? You're up against you, it'd be seniors up against ARCs, and I fucking loved that. I nailed those. I loved the kind of learning how to, it's manipulating situations for your candidate, your client's benefit, essentially. So I loved a lot of that. I just didn't really have that drive to do it day in, day out until you got to that point where you were having lots of those conversations. So I basically spoke to my manager, Paul Griffiths, and just said, I get this, but I want to help teach it rather than do it. We built out the academy. So all the new recruits I basically got before they went into their teams, I did call coaching with them daily, trained them on the job. When they pulled roles, walked through those roles with them, and did, again, set up lots of, versus kind of competitions, and we'd all have a day on a Tuesday where we'd all do the same call sessions and make it very competitive. So have a little, called the academy, we called it, a little group of new recruits, and it's a bit like Jose Mourinho. We had a proper siege mentality. Like, we would beat the RCs, the ones above, and we did. And I think I had about 17 in my team at one point. Having such a strong group of like hungry people, that obviously I infused a lot of that, let's fucking show them kind of mentality, and really pushed everyone. I think that's why we won SP Team of the Year, because there was a lot of like pressure from the bottom coming through, and I know a few of those guys are managers there now and doing really well, which is great.
So after a few different roles there in S3, and you mentioned there about Bold, right? So that's some journey from going, like, taking that to £1 million business and becoming MD. Will you just talk me through that? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah,
like, take us through the journey.
I made the as always, slightly, pardon the pun, a bold move you could call it. 6 months into COVID, I'd had to go back to recruitment basically, or 3 months into COVID, which I was like, there's a reason I stopped doing this, and it's not looking like we're getting back in offices anytime soon for me to pick up that coaching role. So I just said to my bosses at B, I respect you too much to just be grafting for a job on the side. So do you want to just whack me on gardening leave for 4 weeks, and I'll find something at the height of this unemployment crisis and this pandemic that we're doing. And one of the recruiters there, Gavin, who looks after project managers, said, you should look at project management. So I spoke to Bold because I knew someone that had gone there, the first project management hire. He said, well, we're looking at someone on the sales side. Went and had a chat, and I just completed my master's, which I did part-time in psychology. I'm nerdy about brain neuroscience and manipulation. And branding suddenly appeared as this thing of what I can sell to recruitment companies. So it's the world that I know and enjoy still, but then the actual product or the service, the project would be shaping, positioning and manipulating how they're perceived in the market. Like, it was like a blend of all the stuff I like, which is sales and that kind of competitive environment, and then also psychology, which is heavily influenced in branding. And that's really how that was born. So obviously I learned the ropes from Rich for 6 months, absolute master of it, and very much learned how to craft a lot of stuff, how to position stuff. It was also all the brand work went through Potent at the time anyway, so we were kind of building up Potent, and then all the web stuff went through Bold, and that was great. I then took over all the sales side of that and built up a mini team, a sales and marketing team with two great individuals, Tom and Jimmy from S3 as well. So there's 3 of us there, and we just created a really replicable, scalable, systemized process of fairly basic, value-added content, showing evidence, value-added content, showing evidence, and punctuate that with, Jimmy on the phones doing the efforts on the BD front. And we were a team of 3. It wasn't, there's sales and there's marketing and you do that. It's like, what are we doing as a group? And that's, I think, really how we went up a few levels quicker than we probably should have done, just because there was 3 of us that were on it and hungry. And kudos to Tom and Richie, the owners as well, because they brought in people. They wanted to maybe step away a bit and have other people come in and do a lot of the work, like a lot of owners do. And they, found a few of us, really hungry guys who were probably at the right time and had already worked together at S3. That's why I like high-end ex-recruiters now, because you're going to get that strong work ethic as standard. So I think it was a perfect storm of that, really. Obviously grew that really well. Rich went off, and it was almost surplus to requirements at that stage, so he went off and got stuck in with a load of other businesses and everything that he's doing now. Like I said, I was MD for a year, which probably didn't enjoy anywhere near as much. I wasn't doing hands-on branding as much with people. I was far removed, or slightly more removed from that. I wasn't doing any sales, which I didn't do a great deal before, but I'd jump on and close stuff and help with some of the bigger deals, maybe where there's a group involved and there's 4, 5, 6 websites, etc. But I wasn't really doing any of that. It was just more internal management, and I didn't like it as much. It was just, Sam, there's a problem. Can you come and face the music type thing, which wasn't really what I'm good at. So it made sense for me to just sort of go and do what I did enjoy. And Potent as a business had just become dormant because Rich had gone off and done Unbound. He's now doing Impact Board. So it made sense to just sort of reignite that business, given we'd got a portfolio that I think 80-90% I contributed towards anyway. So we just managed to sort of create a new business, but relive that business essentially, and go again. And my interests are obviously slightly more on the marketing side of things. So yes, we're doing what we did at Bold, but that's kind of like a part of what we do as opposed to everything that we do.
Who are you serving at the moment? Who are your, like with Potent, who's your client base?
It's by nature of my last 8-10 years, recruitment companies, but in the main it's B2B service based. So we've got like a few like lawyers, for example, those kind of clients, accountant, like financial directors and people like that. The service-based industries in the B2B realm.
But the majority is recruitment businesses.
But yeah, for now, 90% is kind of recruitment businesses, yeah.
And is there a specific type of, like, are you working with solos? Is it like the 6 to 10 people?
Good question.
Is it big
yeah,
stuff?
I think it really depends on what someone needs. I'd say if I look at my last 12 months, probably from your solos up to maybe 10 heads is probably my sweetest spot where I've worked with a lot of people over the last year. Having said that, this year I'm working for the next 12 months with a company up north that's got 65 heads and been going for over 50 years. So that's a slightly different kind of game. But yeah. I'd say in the main, it's probably that SME kind of area. And yeah, depending on what people need, for example, if someone needs a website, that could be a massive company that just needs a brochure site, or it could be a small company that needs bells and whistles and lots of AI. So it really depends on what someone needs. I'd say typically if you've got maybe one marketing hire, that's probably a sweet spot for me, because as we get on to, you'll often see that marketing doesn't work a lot of the time if you've just got one marketer who's on 30-35 grand a year and is expected to come and be the marketing department and bring the strategy and implement it and be the budget and everything else. So I think that's probably where it often works, is getting in there and helping bridge that gap. An awful analogy, but keep the football theme going, I'd say if you've got sales team as your consultants, your strikers that are scoring goals, putting in deals, and you've got your marketing, which your midfielders should be laying on your assists, I'd say we're like a classic number 10. We sort of sit in that middle and feed both.
You just likened yourself to Messi.
Not at all. Hey, you said those words.
So where you say there about like things not working, you said something to me last year. You said marketing doesn't work unless it's embedded in BD.
Yeah.
I think, what does that mean?
Yeah, I stand by that, and there'll be lots of people on the marketing side of the recruitment argument that will hate this, and some on the sales side as well. But for me, you could have great marketing, good content, good copy, going to the right people, well-defined ICPs, reverse engineered around their needs, all the rest of it. But if it's just marketing kind of over here, going out through the side door, the back door, and sales are just talking about pipeline over here all the time and have no idea what's going on, there's a disconnect between the two, which there nearly always is within recruitment companies. Your marketing's never really going to get the financial ROI that it could get, because it's doing its own thing. And there's a number of reasons for that. First of all, often they're marketing guesses. So they're making assumptions as to what the ICPs, the audience, want to see. But if you never speak to the sales teams that are engaging with their audiences day in, day out and having however many calls per week, how are you going to know what the audience wants? Oh, well, that's ChatGPT. Great, we're now into the realm of, well, you're creating what everybody else creates because you've not gone and done the research. It's really, really basic. But if you don't ever speak to the people that have access to the people we're trying to sell to, how can you create something that's good for them? And by the same token, once you have created something that is really good, what's the best way to get it out there? Well, it's the salespeople, because you can do a campaign on email, you can put a couple of posts on LinkedIn. Most of your market will miss that. If you have something that your sales team are driving and pushing, and there's some incentive around that, and they can see the benefit of it because it's opening the door and having better conversations, we're now taking that marketing asset and getting it across to everybody. So I think if you take an example of like an industry report, just as a, wanky marketing like term alert, but a marketing asset, which could be lots of different things. Like this podcast, for example, great asset, you'll snip this up, or Lovely World will snip this up and you'll have a load of great marketing assets to use for your BD, right? Let's take an industry report as a nice, clear example. We did this with Chris Pitt, Chris, we did with Peace Recruitment just before we exited, 18 months or so ago. They've
been on the pod fairly recently.
There you go. He's doing some coaching, I better plug him if I mention it. So we did a great piece of work with them where we basically just took a very simple industry report technique and rolled it out over about 3 months. So if you say break it down into simple terms, month 1 might be information gather. So you say to your consultants, and you can get really prescriptive with it and give them the questions that they need to be going asking and making it as simple as possible. But if you're saying that in 4 weeks' time, we're going to be creating this document, this report on the state of X within Y industry, pick a topic that's fairly sexy, people are going to want to have some kind of interest in or have got an opinion on. Okay, rather than us just going.
Sorry, what's an example? I just because I'm scribbling this down.
Yeah, go
so
for it, yeah.
So what's an example of that? Something cool and sexy that people would be interested in.
Okay, so I mean, let's say something like AI, for example, is big at the moment. So let's say if you're working in, I don't know, work with lawyers and solicitors, you might say we're doing an industry report on how the state of the current state of AI is impacting day-to-day use of lawyers within a particular niche.
Okay.
Whatever area you work in. Something that, if you mention, and again, this is where you ask your consultants, say, what do you have conversations about all day long? The niche, the better. So you might work in cybersecurity and there's a new particular certification that's come out that's going to change the way that everything works. Well, great, do a report on that, because we want to... UCAL, use customers' own words. I remember that from working in a bank, right? If they call it a current account, you call it a current account, or whatever. Same sort of thing. Like, what do people talk about? Well, we'll talk back to them about it. It's basic kind of stuff, right? But you take this report on this, interesting topic.
Yeah, perfect.
Give your sales team a load of questions that are very simple. And it's very easy to go and do BD then. Even consultants that don't hit the phone, unfortunately there's a lot of them somehow, that still kind of just don't do any phone work. Even if it's not on the phone, I think it should be on the phone, but it's very easy to say, hey, I'm Sam, I'm from ABC Recruitment. Don't worry, I'm not going to mention a candidate or ask about jobs. So, okay, great, I've got 2 seconds and what the fuck do you want then? We're building report on X, blow a bit of smoke up their arse as a respected person, thought you'd be a great person to contribute to it. I've got 3 questions kind of running past you. Great, we've got touch point number 1. A week later, 2 weeks later, you might give them a call and say, oh, by the way, we spoke last week about the report. I've spoke to X and Y, name drop some other big wigs in their industry that they're going to know. They mentioned this and this. Is that something you've experienced? It's touch point number 2. We've not mentioned recruitment. We've not sold to them. We've built a good relationship with them so far. The end of the month, we've hit our target, spoke to however many people. I think for Chris, we did it as a form, so you could speak to them and then send the form out for them to fill in their own time. We got over 100 responses, so we've got a good amount of credibility in the content that we're drawing from. Your marketing team then come into play, create something wonderful, make it look good, pull out all the key themes. I mean, AI can do this for you in seconds now, but pull out all the key themes, get your sales team's opinions on that as well, so there's a bit of your voice, not just parroting and repeating what people have said, but you create something that's a nice document. You could bind it, have a physical version, you go and have face-to-face meetings with, and digital versions, snip it up, lots of bits for socials, all the rest of it. You do your marketing stuff with it. The difference is we know that's going to resonate when we take it to market because it's come from the horse's mouth. We're telling people what them and other people in the same area think about this topic. So it's infinitely better already than just typically what a marketing team in silo would create, just by definition of how the information's being created. Send back over to sales team for, say, month 3 if you're doing this over 90 days. Use that asset, that report, to go and book meetings. You go back to people you've already spoke to, touch point 3 and 4, we spoke about this, here's the thing, you'll have a meeting. If you're getting 4, maybe 5 touch points off one marketing asset over the space of 2 to 3 months, and throughout the series of those calls, a consultant hasn't flipped that call into talking about some kind of pipeline, maybe not the right prospect, we're not very good at the job and they need some training on what you do, BD training. Plug you as well whilst we're here. But ultimately, there's also that rule of reciprocity, which is if I've called you 3-4 times and I've just given, not mentioned, at some point you're going to turn around and say, what is it you do, Sam? You do recruitment for lawyers, right? And go, yeah, you got permission to pitch. We've been asked to pitch then. You can go and do your little bit of spiel and try and book a meeting. But if you're doing that, repeatedly every month or every quarter with a different focus from a marketing lens that's driven from sales, the core metric, i.e. revenue, should go up.
Like you said, if you're doing that every quarter, this 90-day kind of
can run it how
strategy,
you like, yeah.
What does good look like? Is that this 90 days we're putting this document together, the next 90 days we're going to do the same thing, we're going to do information gather, we're going to put the thing together and we're going to use that to book meetings. Is that what good looks like?
I think so personally, and that might not always be information gathering, it might be an event that you're doing. You might say, great, we're going to pluck this date in June, have an event, and then from late April we're going to drive whatever to it. That might be that quarters thing. You might have a smaller technique that you're just doing over a month, but for me it should run in cycles like that, so you can plan the strategy, execute it, see what worked, see what didn't. There might be some genius ideas that you hadn't thought of that come out because a consultant said, I asked this question actually and we got loads of traction. It's like, great, we'll do it on that then. Could be a podcast, could be loads of different things, whatever that asset is. I think the underlying principle is, can we get that asset being driven by consultants who are speaking to people that are going to make a decision on whether they work with us or not all day, every day, rather than a consultant not wanting to do BD because I can't be asked sending a candidate in again, or speaking to that manager without anything really to offer them up again for the 6th time this year and it's only March. Can we give people a reason to go in BD? I think from the other side of the fence, like if you're managing a sales team and you're saying, well, look, we've given you everything you need. There's something to go out there and sell other than the service. So you don't have to just go in there and sell what we're doing. You've built your network, or you've got your database, you've got your list of people. Like if that's not right, there's a problem there. Great, you can identify that. If you've been given a list of questions and basically being told go and do some market research, it's not hard, is it? Compared to go and call 100 managers and try and book a meeting talking about hiring possibilities in the future. So I think if nothing else, using it to drive activity from a sales perspective. I think that's why I'm slightly different. That terrible number 10 analogy comes in, is that I understand marketing, but really my brain is in a salesperson's brain. That's really what I think about. And if we can set up more conversations, there's going to be more opportunities. So give more reason to create more conversations. It makes sense to me.
Is it easier to measure ROI? Because this is like one of the things that comes up, and I feel like such a bastard now, because I remember like years ago when I was running a business, and we had this poor girl Gemma, like one marketing person between like 37 of us, and she probably was on about 30 grand, and we're like, where's the ROI of what you're doing? And it was really unfair, some of this stuff, whereas I think at least here you go, well, we booked 19 meetings in those off the back of this 90-day sort of process. And you could, one of the things I loved at S3 was sales days. I fucking love the sales day, because you'd split everybody up and you have your teams. There'd be a bit of that like competitiveness going on. The results we used to get in terms of like meetings booked, jobs booked, all the rest of it on one day was crazy. I used to sit there and think, why don't we do this every week? Like, what we're doing, do this for the Olympics or once a quarter, the World Cup or whatever. But do a sales day every week, every fortnight on this. Like, if you've got, again, making assumptions here, but most good consultants I know don't like being beaten at something they think they're good at. So set a little like competition going, fuel that dopamine. And I think this is a great way to do it. So coming back to your question about tracking ROI, it doesn't even have to be. So I think, again, I get criticized for this. I think there's only one metric, which is, does revenue go up? And the way we typically look at that is, okay, well, what are the key performance indicators that show revenue goes up? Great, well, our meetings going up, our conversations, our D jobs or loose jobs being pulled, current clients being contacted, lapsed clients being contacted, all the things that you'd look at. Well, if we've got an army of reasons to go out and speak to these people, there should be no reason why everyone's not being contacted. If everyone's being contacted regularly, meetings should go up, jobs should be pulled. Revenue should be increasing. So I always think it's a funny one when it comes to ROI, and I'm guilty of it, but marketers will go, it's hard to say. But it is. But it's also not, because ultimately if you're investing in something, you should see activity increasing and you should see an increase on return on that activity. And if you're not, then you need to diagnose where the problem is. And 9 times out of 10 what I see is it's that example you just said, maybe mid-level marketer who's got a bit of experience, even in recruitment maybe, who's expected to come up with a strategy like a CMO would, and then come up with all the metrics and the deliverables, and then know how to manage upwards into the SLT and try and get buy-in to have decisions in the boardroom, and then also try and motivate a team of 35 like rowdy consultants and try and get them to buy into what the fuck I'm trying to It's an impossible task. So I think it's that disconnect that is the easiest way to suddenly go, oh, okay, we could actually do this company I'm going to be working with for the next 12 months. They're already doing a load of great stuff. They've got newsletters. They've got a great set of like a tech stack. It's just not in sync. Like, for me, I look at it and think there's an easy win here. It's a very easy win. We just get what we're doing amplified by the sales team and spoken about more and driven by them. Because, like I said, if you're a consultant, particularly if you're a junior consultant, you've got somebody that's saying we need to be on the phone, and you're thinking, give me a better script then, or get me Jamie in, or what do you want me to say, because I've just got candidates and a list of people here. And if there's that lack of training or even that lack of confidence, it's much easier to say to somebody, well, don't worry about booking meetings, don't worry about talking about jobs and recruitment and pipeline, just go and find out about these 4 things and speak to as many managers as you can. That's the only metric I care about. How many conversations have you had about this? Great. I'd much rather someone had 100 conversations with hiring managers and didn't actually get that much traction but are building their network than just pretended to phone 20, quickly got to voicemail, left it and said, I've done BD for an hour. And you kind of touched on it here. So this is like best practice, is what we should be thinking about, right? And I actually think I think you can do this regardless of whether you're a 3-person business or a 60-person
100%.
business. Where do people go wrong? Like what? And you kind of touched on some of it already, but what do you typically find that people are doing?
A lot of reliance on tech they don't need, or tech that they don't actually utilize. So I think it's very easy to get sucked into, I've got this, it's only £99 a month, great. And then we've got this, and it does that, and it's only 215 quid a month, great, we'll sign up. And suddenly you've got like a £3,000 a month tech stack, and you're thinking, well, that does the same thing as that. And actually that tool does like 80% of what both of those do combined. So why are we overlapping? And it's often because there's not a clear strategy. So again, I kind of hate that word strategy. It's kind of been bastardized a bit to just mean like, oh, I know what I'm talking about. Really, like what I've outlined above there, that would be the kind of the strategy that I would implement. But is there a strategy? Do we know how doing X action generates Y outcome? And obviously the output is always going to be that revenue increases, whether that's short or long term. Is there a plan as to how that works? And then a plan as to how that's executed? And if there's not that, you're never really going to get much success. You might have a diamond of a marketeer that is really skilled in email marketing and sets up some great funnels there, and that would be great, and you get some good results there, but it's never going to be consistent if you've not got it all synced up. So I'd say that's definitely one error. I'd say the other one is people thinking that marketing is something that it's not, and again, I'll get crucified for this because I'm not a marketer, like, per se. I don't have any qualifications in marketing or anything. I just hands-on experience building like a team. But for me, that marketing asset is kind of the least important bit of marketing, because it doesn't really matter, in my opinion, whether that's an incredible industry report or whether it's just all right. It's got to be good. You've got to have standards, but the money's made in all the BD work off the back of it, both before and afterwards. So I think the problem is people thinking that marketing is the thing that generates the revenue. It's not. It's a great like stabilizer or assist maker or whatever you want to call it. It's a great platform or springboard to go and make more money, but in and of itself, it's probably not going to be that much of a revenue generator, even if it's done well to the right people. Because if you look at how much activity goes on from a sales team in terms of interaction with clients and candidates, and how much activity goes on from a marketing perspective in terms of engagement with clients and candidates, the ratio would be crazy. It's way more on this side. These people might get more views on a LinkedIn post. I'd much rather have 100 conversations a week per consultant, you know.
LinkedIn views don't pay the bills, do they?
You can't pay your mortgage with impressions. And if you can, like, let me know. I don't have money to spend, but it would help.
You mentioned that you said a company I'm working with for the next 12 months. So that's something you go in as like a fractional CMO, right?
So this, good questions. This is kind of my new service, new product, if you like. So we've been selling marketing services, and we can do a lot of that stuff. Social posts, setting up email marketing, all that. There's a lot of people that can do that. I think fractional is, again, a good route. I think for a lot of people, getting somebody in to set that strategy and how to execute it is good. But I think let's take that example of 35 grand mid-level marketer with 20 consultants to manage. If you're having a fractional coming in a day a month, maybe 2 days a month, you probably love those days. But the other 18 to 20 working days are probably you're back to, well, I don't know what to do or how to execute this. So that kind of doesn't work for me for a lot of recruitment companies. You've got sort of outsourcing it, which again can be great. There's some really good recruitment marketing agencies that, if you spend a decent amount of money, do a fantastic job. Kitso up in Leeds, Chris Conlon, for example, a great example, do some fantastic work. But a lot of people maybe don't have that budget to do it, or they've got someone internal or an internal team that they've paid for. So outsourcing often isn't the right option. And like I say, whichever route you go for, I think if there's not someone linking it in with the sales team and getting them motivated, it's almost a little bit pointless. So what I'm doing with these guys, for example, is we'll be doing quarterly stuff with the board and the SLT to review the strategy that we're doing. We'll be doing half a day a month with the marketing director, on executing that strategy, and then constant like WhatsApp support for whatever they need, so that it's not just great, here's a strategy, off you go, but help execute it in a month's
time.
And then the same thing once a month with the sales team and sales team managers, mainly the sales team managers, on what we need them to be driving into the teams from a market. So everything we discussed today, making sure they are confident what the plan is and how to drive that in the teams, and then reviewing stats and things like that, and making sure that, okay, we've said this is the plan, is it being executed, where's the bottleneck, have marketing dropped the ball and not got something ready, our sales team just not doing the numbers, where's the problem? And I think it's that bit in the middle that people need. So it's kind of fractional, but it's also then kind of mentoring the marketing team with execution, and then like driving sales team, motivating a sales team, which kind of what I was going back to what I was doing a little bit at S3, which I really enjoyed. So getting a bit hands-on, but then also keeping the board happy and in the loop with what the strategy is really.
When you're brought in as a fractional CMO, what's the first thing you do? Or what's the first like 3 questions you ask? What's the first thing you want to get stuck into? Because you can't do everything straight away, right? What's your starting point?
Always what's the goal? Because there's no point creating anything unless we know what success looks like for somebody. So what does somebody actually want? And again, that varies massively on size of company. A solopreneur might want to just focus on their personal brand and increasing that and having more conversations through LinkedIn, for example. Somebody else, it might be around the tech stack that they're using and having lots of automation set up so that things are going off in the background. Their consultants don't have to be doing. So what does success look like is definitely the number one thing. Number 2, what stopped you getting there previously? Like what's the problem been, and being quite ruthless on that. Let's find out what the bottleneck has actually been, because if you don't know that, you could again come up with a great strategy, but if there's an issue in the middle that's still going to be an issue, you need to come up with a plan that works around that rather than just plowing on regardless, because you'll fall in the same pitfall. So I'd say they're probably the two major things, and often there's a dose of reality going into those conversations as well, in terms of a lot of the conversation will be, well, I need more leads. It's like, great. Yeah. What's the current process? What do we currently do? Great. We can improve what we're doing from a marketing perspective. What's the current BD process? There's the problem. So a lot of the time it's actually diagnosing where the problem lies. And this is why I've moved to what I'm delivering this year. Is more often than not, last year it wasn't always the marketing that was the problem. It was the BD was the problem, and fixing one will massively help the other in a cyclical nature. But there's no point, and I think there's lots of recruitment companies that would have just gone to a different marketing agency and been sold something that is in practice really good and would work to an extent, but it's never going to get the returns they're wanting because it's not in any way linked to where most of the revenue generating activity is, which is from the sales consultants. It
loops back to that thing we started with right at the beginning, isn't it? Is that you can have marketing generating 30 leads a day. Yeah. If people aren't executing and doing something with that information, then it...
Well, this is where the argument of ROI from marketing, like in theory, shouldn't ever be judged against revenue, because there's always someone in the middle. Like you just said there, if I lay on 10 great leads for you and you fuck them up by doing a bad pitch, that's not marketing's fault. That's totally on sales' fault. By the same token, if sales team are getting 10 leads a day but 9 of them are irrelevant, that's a marketing problem.
Yeah. But I suppose when you've got those two groups of people talking and working together...
I was just going to say, it shouldn't ever really be my leads for you and your leads for us. It should be, who are we targeting? Like who and how are we collectively approaching them? So great, we've got these target lists. You could go down an ABM style and you have account-based marketing, your top clients that you're going after, and then you attack them together. It could be slightly looser, maybe going after new markets or new territories, but it's still got to be a together plan, rather than we're going to send some marketing or we're going to send some newsletters out on LinkedIn and you go and just have conversations. I think a consultant's head is full with so much useful information, and now it used to be a case, well, how do you get in all that? Well, every call's recorded now pretty much, whether on a phone system or on Zoom. So one of the first things I would do as a marketer is say, great, like give me a fucking dump of all the conversations from the last 3 months. Let's pull out trends and analyze that. Great, we've got our problems, we've got our symptoms, off we go. It's very easy to do. Probably do it on Copilot or Teams or whatever without even any external kind of tool. But how often are people doing that? How often have you reviewed your main conversations and topics of them and what the problem, like consistent problems have come up, and creating marketing reverse engineered around that, rather than let's talk about salary surveys?
Do you know what? I had this back in December with we were talking about LinkedIn generally and posting, and one of the girls in the session, young ladies in the session, she was like, I just don't know if I've got anything decent to talk about on LinkedIn. And I was like, exactly what you said there. I was like, let's pull the transcripts from the last 10 candidate calls you've had, put it into ChatGPT and go find me 5 things that I can turn into a valuable LinkedIn post. And there's loads of good stuff.
Get ChatGPT or whatever, give you a couple of bullet points. Oh, I remember that. I can write about that. I know there's so many bits of spiel that I've said for the last however many years that if this conversation goes this way, I know I've got a bit like a comedian. I've got a 30-second joke on that with a punchline. Like you all know, I know if this problem comes up in a sales conversation, I know I've got a couple of minutes that is going to tackle that
I bet you still
problem.
do great question.
Of course, like the plumber with the ref.
Yeah.
Like, it's got to be done. But you're confident in what you're saying. Like, that's the stuff you should be talking about. Like, what do I say to candidates and clients, like, repetitively?
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason you're saying it repetitively. It's because it's obviously an interesting thing to talk about. Coming back to that, though, like, I don't know what to post. I've got nothing to talk about. I think, I'm not just saying it because he's here, but Will did a great piece at the end of last year talking about how video is going to change moving into 2026. It already is. Less from talking heads, let me talk at you, and more into vlogging, showing behind the scenes, showing the process, that kind of thing. And I think that's true for just general posting as well. So if you take evidence posts or proof posts, as I like to call them, they're the most impactful, but the least we ever see on LinkedIn. Now, a gold standard of that would be a client, video testimonial where you go through, psychologically smart questions. What was the problem? What was the challenge? What were your hesitations before working with us? What was impressive about us? You get a really good case study, have it on your website, snip it up into lots of clips. Like, that's brilliant for evidence. It's boring psychological where your brain doesn't know the difference between seeing and experiencing. That's why books and films are so popular. So if I see, let's say I'm a finance director, and I see another finance director talking about this company, my brain associates me having that good experience with that recruitment company, even if I've just watched a video on it. So there's lots of neuroscience into why sharing evidence is so important. But at the other end of the scale, take that young lady that is presumably fairly new to recruitment, doesn't think they've got much to offer. Just document what you're doing. Just talk about what you've done. And if you get to the end of the day and you don't have one win, or one positive thing, one good thing, what have you done? And if you get to the end of the week and you haven't got a little bit of a wrap up, even spoke to X amount of candidates, had X amount of calls with clients, and tracked maybe one job for next week, it doesn't have to be, I did a 20k deal in 3 days. It doesn't have to be anything impressive, but if you just document what you're doing, in my opinion, you're already better than most of the people on LinkedIn that are just using GPT to write their posts, and it's very obvious, or just rinsing and repeating the same kind of stuff, talking to other recruiters a lot of the time, bizarrely, and getting 30 likes from other random recruiters, but no one in their HVAC industry or whatever it is. So just document what you're doing. Again, psychologically, people want to see that you can walk the walk, not just sort of talk it. So if you're constantly giving advice, but there's never actually, and here's a happy client, and here's a happy placement I've done, and here's a candidate and what they said about me, where's the trust? If you don't have trust, people are never going to buy from you. So whether that is screenshotting a WhatsApp message, or taking a snippet of an email that you've got, or just documenting what you've got going on, of what you've been doing, it just shows people like, okay, this person's actually busy. A
lot of what you're talking about here, I think maybe 10 years ago would have been a marketeer's job. Mm-hmm. That's very much the recruiter's job now, isn't it? And it's a funny thing, because I think if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I would have said to you, recruitment is a sales job, and it is only, and I will die on this hill that this is a sales job. I think more and more actually it's becoming a marketing job as much as it is a sales job. And I think we've got recruiters that are YouTubers, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's marketing.
Yep.
And so I think this is as much as we're talking about how does sales and marketing work together, like the recruiter's got to have both of those in their armory, right?
You've summed up essentially like what I believe in. Like it isn't one, you've got to have both. I don't think you could still be very successful with a phone and a basic LinkedIn license and a niche, and just going at it with the old principles that working a candidate out, making sure you understand, you build your network, you take as many references as possible, you do all the basic stuff that I was taught at S3. It would still work. You could get there quicker with some other bits and pieces, but if you go on the other end of the scale and you just go down making YouTube shorts and TikToks, again, it might well work, but somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot. It is where you're doing a lot of that potentially old school BD. But for me, hitting the phones doesn't mean sales calls and BD. It just means having conversations. And you can have conversations on LinkedIn. Like I make sure I send X amount of DMs every single day just to make sure I've always got conversations going. But realistically, having those conversations on a phone is always going to get quicker results and build that relationship quicker. Once you spoke to somebody or had a meeting, I mean, again, maybe just the world has changed, but how many years ago when I was at S3, I was out one day a week in Manchester or Liverpool because that was my patch, meeting as many clients and candidates as I could, 5-6 meetings, and running from fucking Manchester to Victoria to Piccadilly, and realising I need to be at Deansgate. And it was but that was a day of the week was out the office meeting people, and if you weren't, there was sort of questions asked as to why we're not having as many face-to-face meetings. And again, boring and psychological, but if I sit and have a 10-minute conversation about your kids face to face and I've just bought you a drink, it's harder for you to ghost me. It's harder for you to be an arsehole to me. The next time I need to try and get a manager's name for a place I'm trying to pitch someone into, or whatever it might be. So I think we've maybe lost a lot of human side of recruitment by replacing it with automation and tech, which does it at a quicker rate and at higher volume. And it needs to be in there. I'm not saying we don't embrace that, but there's got to be a sweet spot, because I think if you were designing, you got your FIFA cards, if you're designing your recruiter and all the different like skills or whatever in 2026, it would probably be reasonably equal, I think, in terms of the, say, savviness or skills you've got to have around sales and sales process, but also marketing and top of funnel marketing processes, which is now taken more increasingly care of by recruiters, their content, their personal brands, as opposed to general marketing coming from like a central source, if you like.
Sam, I've got a game that I'd like us to play.
Sure.
I've actually borrowed this from, well, I heard something similar on Diary of a CEO, and I thought, oh, that's quite good. And then when we got you booked in to come on the pod, I thought that'd be really good for Sam. So I've called this game, Where Should I Spend My Money?
Oh, it's so inventive.
Right. So I've got 3 scenarios here, right?
Yep.
And I'll give you all 3, and I'd just like to get your thoughts on marketing budget. Where should it be spent?
Okay, cool.
So first example I've got is a solo recruiter, and they have got 300 quid a month to spend on marketing. My next example that I've got a 10-person business. They don't have anyone doing marketing like inside the business, and they've got $2,000 a month to spend. And then my third one, this is a 20-person business. They've actually got a marketing apprentice, and they've got $3,000 a month to spend. Should we start with the solo and work up?
Yeah, so starting with your solo, I think assuming you've got stuff like a CRM and like LinkedIn license, stuff like that in place, so assuming you've got
Let's assume we've got a phone system, we've got
all
CRM.
that stuff.
Yeah.
So if you've got that kind of budget, I think the thing you'd be able to do for a couple £100 a month is set up a good email infrastructure. So again, what I mean by that is not having all of your marketing emails and e-shots and outreach and everything coming from your centralized domain, because it's very easily gets into spam. So having lots of subdomains set up on something like Instantly or Smartlead, or there's a lot of, I think it's like embedded within Sourcewell, there's lots of tools that do it, but essentially having lots of subdomains that you then have different accounts for, that you send out your marketing at volume for.
I think this is really important actually to pause on this, because and the reason why, because I've had this issue in my business. I've spoken about it very publicly, but I've had this where there's one email address and every email has always come from that.
Yeah.
And then last year, or maybe it was the year before, I just, like, my deliverability fell off a cliff, and I've had that now. So there's like 9 different email addresses that
there you go.
That send
the way to look at it is like if I'm, so my email, sam@potentpositioning.com, like if I am sending even 200 emails a day, so fairly low level marketing really, if I'm just sending like 200 emails out a day or something like that from my domain, I'm not techie, so I'll say I'll dumb it down, but I'll just talk about my knowledge. If you're looking at it from like a spam filters perspective, you're going to say, okay, well, we're sending out 200 emails plus whatever emails I send out, 250 emails, for example, a day, and we're getting maybe 10, 20 responses. That maybe doesn't look every day like a normal inbox. That looks like a marketing inbox. Very quickly that's going to start flagging as potentially marketing rather than normal use inbox. And then as soon as you start getting into spam, it's really difficult to get out, as you would have found. And you've also got the complexity of Google versus Outlook. And once a lot of recruitment companies are in Outlook, and once you're in Outlook, it's quite hard to get out of that spam kind of area or de-blacklist you or whatever the technical term is. So instead of sending all that marketing from my domain, I might have sam@potent-positioning.com as a separate subdomain and have an account there, and I might have, as you said, 9-10 of those, sending the same amount of emails, 200 emails out, but we're actually sending it across 10 email accounts. So it looks like each one of those is a normal email account, because you'll get a handful of responses, but it's not high volume, and my domain is safe. So if I am like what you had, if I'm speaking to clients and candidates, etc., I know that I'm safe. The other thing is, if then one of those email accounts gets burned or gets flagged for spam, you've still got 8 or 9 others. So you just take that one out, put it back on warm up, and your marketing doesn't have to stop. Whereas if you've got everything in one kind of centralized area, if you do have a problem with that, your email marketing's like kaput. While that fixes, might be 2-3 weeks at best if you just need to rewarm them up. So if you've only got a small budget, I think the biggest thing you could probably do is just have a good safe email infrastructure that is you're confident is going to be delivering. Because before you ever start again doing any marketing or creating any, even if it's just a newsletter that you decide to do, if you're spending time on it and it's just going in people's spam folder, colossal waste of time and obviously no ROI. So I'd say probably that. The other thing, again, it's down to personal preference a little bit as a solopreneur and how they work, but I'd go and get a tool called Kondo, which I think is game changing. So
what's this? I don't know this.
It's Kondo. It's basically a LinkedIn organizer for your messages. So at the minute at LinkedIn, I think you can star a conversation. That's about as segmentation as you can get. This basically just you use it as your chat function, but you can have as many different like buckets and pots and folders as you want. So for me, I just use it to gamify BD. So I might go to my had meeting with bucket, for example. I'm going to try and do some BD and get some meetings booked with that bucket. Or it might be I'm going to try and get people from my never responded into my cold column, for example, and but you can gamify it a bit then, and each day you might spend an hour on a different bucket, or you might again, we'll talk about what we've got here. Okay, we've got an event that we're going to be pushing, so we'll create a new bucket, and everyone that I've mentioned the event to goes in there, and that's the picture list for me to call through. Like you can gamify it, and it's fairly cheap.
Yeah.
So even if I was a consultant, I'd go and pay for it out of my own pockets. It's transformative in terms of, especially if you're not heavy phone use and you are DMs, which is nothing wrong with it. It gets vilified a lot. I think there's anything wrong with it if you're good at it. But if that's where you win a lot of business, I think it's a must personally.
So that's our solo. What about our 10-person business? No marketing hire, $2,000 a month.
Yeah.
Where should I spend my
so
money?
If we've got no marketing hire in there at all, I'd say that a lot of the budget there is probably going to go down to
go and hire someone.
The execution of a lot of those basics. So whether that is hiring somebody, whether that is getting somebody else in to do a lot of it. Let's say you've got that infrastructure set up. You've now got 10 people. There's maybe 2 different markets, 3 different markets. Owner is busy being an MD or being an owner and running the ship and all the rest of it. You need somebody to come in and say, right, well, I'll say take control of socials and create the copy for this and create all this for that. Someone that just owns a section of the execution. I wouldn't expect them to come with the full strategy, and that would need to be worked out a bit internally, or using ChatGPT or speaking to other people or whatever it is. But someone that either comes in or is external that comes in and just does a lot of doing, I think is what you'd need at that stage. Whether that is, and again, I would have someone come in here and say, right, your job is to essentially analyze everything from call transcripts to what the top bidders are talking about, what's going on in the market, and then almost come up with the report or this or the ideas and come up with the stuff. So where I think you go wrong at that level, and a lot of clients do this, is they'll bring someone in and say, off you go.
Yeah.
Give them clear direction. If you don't have it, we're both part of TRN, for example, and there's lots of other groups out there, team as well, whatever it might be. If you're not sure, go and ask a load of other people that have probably made the mistakes that you're about to make and get your advice from them, and then bring somebody in with a very clear, precise remit of what they're looking for. One of my clients has an outsourced marketing person, I want to say in India or the Philippines, somewhere where it is a lot cheaper to hire somebody. He describes them as a scalpel. It says if you point them in the right direction, they are world class at executing what you want them to do. If you don't give them that scalpel-like direction, you're not sure what you're going to get. But if you give them very clear guidelines, unbelievable results. So if you got that kind of budget, you could very easily get almost like a mini team of outsourced people, as long as you then had someone internally, maybe one of the consultants that's got that more marketing eye to give them that direction as what's needed. I think if you're expecting someone at that pay point to come in, like I said, come up with a strategy and then execute on it. And what we often find is your marketeer actually isn't left to do any of that stuff, because they're left to create Canva pitch decks for somebody, or to pop a case study together, or to manage something on the website, or they get drafted into ops roles rather than actual marketing. So again, one of the pitfalls I think you probably have is let a marketer do their marketing job rather than being a bit of a dog's body for whatever needs doing in and amongst the business.
Organising the Christmas party.
Exactly that, yeah.
So at 10 people, we're using our $2,000. We're going to use that to buy in expertise and outsource and
get some execution going consistently, so that okay, great, we've got it might be for the owner's personal brand, it might be for the company brand, but you might know, okay, X amount of posts are going out. We're going to have a newsletter that goes out on LinkedIn, and we're going to have this asset going out every month on email, and that's just going to be as standard as consistent kind of outbound marketing. If you can embed everything with a sales team, etc., great at that stage. But yeah, I think you just need to make sure you've got something consistent going out the door. Then it depends a little bit again on what the consultants are like. 'Cause if you've got 10 consultants there that are maybe slightly younger, brought up with social media like as standard, are more on the marketing side than the sales side when it comes to how they win business, very good at their own personal brands on LinkedIn, you're probably going to spend that money slightly differently. Maybe you'd spend it more on getting some great executions, automation and some clever tools set up that could augment a lot of the processes if your team are already very LinkedIn savvy and winning business that way. If you've got a team that are more all the folks LinkedIn, you probably want to have someone to do more of the digital stuff. So again, even at that level, it really does depend on kind of how you win business. And a bit of a broken record, but it comes back to, well, how can we win more business the easiest way possible? Well, let's analyze what we're good at, where are the gaps, and get someone in to fill those gaps.
Okay. And then our last group, 20-person business, they've got a marketing apprentice, and they've got an additional $3,000 to spend. What are you doing with these guys?
I think first thing you do here is definitely bring in whatever the sexy name is, whether it's a fractional or a portfolio person, or whatever it is, somebody that is director, CMO kind of level standard, that has done it before within recruitment, that can come in and set that strategy. And very clearly, I mean, set the strategy and help execute. And I think at that level, you'd want someone that comes in and mentors that marketing apprentice or that marketing executive. And I often think at that level, there should be an exit plan. So if you take a PT, for example, tons of personal trainers out there. I'd argue if you have a personal trainer for more than 6 months, they're probably not doing their job right, because at some point they should get you onto a health and nutrition plan that you're happy with and can keep up with, your exercise plan that, again, you're happy with, you can keep up with, you can see the progress that you're making, and you can dial it up or dial it down. But in 6 months or so, you should have figured that out, and you maybe need them every quarter, or a check-in every now and then, rather than consistently, because you can execute on that plan now.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same if you're bringing in that top-level strategy person. It might be an 18-month kind of plan, but you'd want that person to come in, set the strategy, train that person up with an eye to either them developing and then having somebody else underneath them, or them growing and then taking other remits, or whatever it might be. But there should be a plan that person comes in, sets strategy, trains, grows, and at some point it's kind of less and less needed until they've left it in a place where you've got a marketing function that is delivering. That's how I see it. So definitely I think you'd want that top level direction at that level. And at that level, that's where you can also probably look at some of the more higher ticket bits of tech, whether that is some bits of AI that does some great stuff on your CRM or your website, whether that is more of like a marketing automation tool that you can do a lot of clever segmentation with it. There's levels to what you can do. I think where we often see is people at the first pot going for that tech without any of the other stuff, and then wondering why results aren't coming. But at that level, you can have a really sophisticated tech setup, but there's no point spending on that if you're then just going to give it to somebody that's just passed a driving license. They're never going to be able to drive it very well.
I could chat to you all day about sales and marketing, but we're sadly out of time almost. Okay. I've got one last question for you. So we're sat here recording this in January of 2026. What do you think the next 12 months looks like for our industry?
Good question. Who knows? As always, is the answer.
Great answer.
We'll leave it there. I've actually seen quite a lot of positivity in quite a lot of markets from quite a few people. Not universal, I do stress that I am always an optimist, as you know. So I think anybody that has got through the last 2 years and is still profitable in business is already doing well, and you will be fine. I don't see it getting much worse. I think a lot of the uncertainty around US, but we'll leave that can of worms unopened, but that is somewhat settled-ish. Obviously a lot of the, so we say, UK governmental change has largely kind of calmed down a little bit. All the budgets and everything are now, people kind of know what the state of play is moving forward, and I think there's going to be a point where people go, fuck it, like we've held pause on so many plans for 18 months, 2 years, let's just push forward. So I think it's going to be a fairly different industry. I personally think it's like time of the SMEs. I think it's going to be the rise of those savvy people that are a good mix of marketing and sales and have got the right mix of grafty BD, but with the right implementation of AI and automation to back that up, that are still meeting people face to face and getting FaceTime with people, networking, doing podcast, all that kind of good stuff. I think those people are really going to thrive. I think your likes of your S3s and your larger companies, I think that they will struggle more personally in the long run, because I think you talked about Diary of a CEO earlier. I mean, that entrepreneurial kind of mindset is hammered into people from teenagers now. So I think the chances of people wanting to go and work their way up for 5 to 10 years at an agency to then maybe think about, I don't think they want to do that hard yards anymore, rightly or wrongly. I think they can say, well, I've got the skills to do this. I've got a year under my belt, 2 years under my belt. I'm going to go do it myself, and a lot of them will be successful. So I think those bigger agencies that relied on, let's get 10 in and 2 will be worldies and the rest will leave within 6 months, probably won't work moving forward. I also, if we talk about CRMs, for example, I think can make or break your kind of whole operation as a recruitment company. There's so many really good, take Atlas for example, really good AI first, AI driven CRM. If you're a big boy, you're never going to be able to implement something like that or roll it out, because you never be confident enough really that it's not going to be developing too quickly for you to handle, and you need something that's got more of an enterprise level kind of operation behind it. But I think with the way AI and technology is going, that will very quickly become far behind the curve. And then if you look at who do we attract from more of an employer brand perspective, if you're trying to attract hungry, like young, driven individuals that want to come and do a tough job, and you say to them, well, we've got all this great tech and it's a cool young company, we can be agile and do this and change that, that's really attractive. If you say, oh, well, we're Hayes or whatever, no one really gives a fuck, do they? Or only the people that do are not the people you're trying to hire. They're the people that are now director level in other agencies. So, yeah, a weird one. I think probably a positive one for a lot of companies. Again, I get told off for this, but it's tough out there. I think if you graft hard enough, there's always work out there. And when I say graft hard, I don't mean like put in long hours and do like. If you're just smart and consistent with what you're doing. Again, my BD is fairly simple. I know if I do it consistently, most months will be pretty good, and some might not be, and that's all right, and some will be great, and that's the nature of sales. But yeah, it's been obviously a tougher few years, but people like yourself, like I know lots of people have done very well. And I think just doing all right is pretty good at this stage. So if you carry on doing all right over the next couple of years, I think you'll very quickly realise you're doing better than most out there.
Mate, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, Jamie.